Hey.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, everybody. Hi, guys. Hi, DJ. Hi, everybody.
DJ.
Welcome to Simply Spooky. We've got another cracking episode this week for you. It is the team from the Alaskan Killer Bigfoot program. And Viv has worked really hard to get these guys on. And it's a boom for us. We're really, really excited about this one because me and Viv are invested in it because we love the program. So, Viv, do you want to go? Would you like to introduce the guys?
I will. Can I first introduce Jeff? He's the historian on the program of Alaskan Killer Bigfoot and somebody I happen to know personally, but don't hold that against me. I love Jeff. We also have Tiffany, who is a sensitive on the program. DJ Brewster, who is, how can I explain it? He's a cook. He's a chef. He's an outdoorsman. He's also, it's just brilliant, DJs. I've got so many questions for DJ, but I'm going to hold them back. And also to Kyle, who is you work the security and you're a bear guard and an outdoorsman in your own right, aren't you, Kyle?
Yes, ma'am. Sounds about right.
The man with the big gun. That's all I know.
The man with the big gun.
Yeah. I'm just so excited to have you all guys
I
on.
know.
Thank you ever so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys, for coming on. It really means a lot to us. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Can we kick it off with Jeff to talk about some of the history of what's going on, what the overview of the program for those that haven't watched. We are putting links in the chat so you can see the trailers and you can join the Facebook fan page where you can put questions there. And also links. You will find it on Discovery Plus anyway over here.
Okay, to try and start, and this is the story of Alaskan Killer Bigfoot. Historically, is centuries in the making. So I will try and summarize as best as I can. The site of what was left of the town of Portlock, Alaska, is located along the Kenai Peninsula in Alaska. And the native people have been there based on the archaeology off and on for many, many centuries. And this is an odd thing that the site would be occupied for a length of time, and then all of a sudden it would be abandoned for another period of years and decades, and then reoccupied again. And the European explorers, among other things, trying to find the polar passage from Europe to Asia via the North Pole was going on, as well as the European powers were competing for the fur trade up in the Alaskan waters. So there were explorers from Russia, from eventually the United States, but also British explorers, Spaniards, and we don't know who all else. And so the historic record comes in the late 1700s when first Captain Cook doesn't land in Portlock, but he anchors and draws maps and charts. Later on, a Spanish explorer named Bazan, he and his fleet anchor, and they actually land on the town site. They put together the possession ceremony claiming the land for Spain. And shortly after they do that, several of the sailors from the fleet die. And even according to the log, it says scurvy, but it's awful coincidental that all of a sudden it happens as soon as they land. And they note that the site had been abandoned by the native people. Shortly after that, and Nathaniel Portlock lands. He also performs a possession ceremony. And although he didn't lose a lot of sailors, very strange things happened to he and his crew as well. And we go forward in time, and eventually there is settlement at the very same site. In the late early 1900s, a small fishing village grows up to be a cannery town with its own small fishing fleet with seasonally over 100 workers. And starting maybe the late 20s through especially the World War II years, over 24 people who were variously hunters, a miner, and others at first they just simply disappear over this time period. Some of them, their bodies were recovered. They went up into the hills where they disappeared, but some of them, their bodies actually are recovered in the lagoon where they may have washed down in the rains, and they're mutilated, not like a bear would have done, but more horribly with more strength. And so virtually overnight, 1949, 1950, the town site is abandoned, and people may well have visited it, but nobody settled there for decades. So about 70 years later, the tribal corporation that is currently living in Nanwalek still owns Portlock, and they are outgrowing their present site, and so they're looking at going back safely and reestablishing a livelihood business and building houses there. And this is the beginning of the TV show Alaskan Killer Bigfoot.
That's amazing,
I pause.
isn't it?
This is amazing.
Did I get it right, Kyle? Tiffany?
Yeah.
DJ?
Yeah, I'd say so. You know, I didn't even know any of that when I first went to Portlock, so it's cool to kind of hear it all recapped again.
Wow.
You probably would have raised your rates if you'd known.
Yeah, I might have. Yeah, there might have been a little bit more contemplation. You know, knowing what I know now, it's an experience I'm glad I had the opportunity to experience. But there's a lot of stuff that happened out there that you know, I think everybody who stepped foot on Portlock and was involved in this project, right down to the tech people and whatnot, can probably, you know, viably say that there's some stuff that happened out there that kind of changed all of us a little bit, you know, and the way we look at things, the way we think about some things. And it wasn't all cakes and roses and peaches and ice cream, you know. There was some pretty crazy stuff that happened that may be on the line of, you know, traumatic PTSD type stuff. So not everything that happened was caught on film. Not everything we found was caught on film. So there's still a lot that has not been shared, right, DJ?
Yes, that is absolutely correct.
Yeah.
So was there more? Sorry, Viv, go on, Viv.
I was to say, do you think that would ever come out? Would you get to be able to tell that story, that what wasn't, you know, what didn't come out on film? Because what we saw was a lot, but you're saying there's a lot more that you didn't show.
Yeah, I think, you know, the way I've tried to summarize it, because I mean it's really hard to quantify the number of things that happened, and not only the number of things that happened, but like the crazy level of stuff that happened. I mean, I think there's days where we didn't even realize how crazy some of the stuff was until we had a chance to get back to camp and sort of decompress and process that information. And then we're just like, wait a minute, like that's really what happened, you know? And it's like, we're so busy doing what we're trying to do, right? Like we have this overwhelming sense of like, we have to keep ourselves safe. But at the same time, because Alaska is just brutal in general, right? The state will just kill you and gobble you up, just sort of in general. But then you put yourself in these remote environments, and then, you know, with some sort of entities or things going on out there, whatever's going on, it's a dangerous place, you know? And so we're kind of focused on that to a large extent. And then we're also tasked with jobs and duties and tasks and things we need to do at the same time. You know, and a lot of the stuff isn't shown, right? Like you don't see how much DJ was actually foraging. You don't see how much like firewood we had to chop, you know, to keep ourselves warm. There's a lot of stuff, but kind of where I was going with this is sort of how like a lot of us have summarized it, is for like every one thing you guys see on the show, there's probably literally 10 other things that happen that you didn't see. So that's kind of the level it's at. Will we ever see it? I think that's where we're trying to go with season 2, right? I think we're trying to keep the story going, and not only keep the story going, but also achieve the goals that we set out there to do, which ultimately was to research the old settlement of Portlock and see if this is something that's going to be suitable for an establishment. You know, for the peoples of Nanwalek. And I think that point got missed by a lot of people as the show went on, because all of a sudden people put us in this categories where we're some sort of cryptic experts, right? Like, why aren't you guys doing DNA samples? Why aren't you guys doing this? Why aren't you guys doing that? You should have scientific equipment out there. And it's like, well, wait a minute. We didn't go out there to find Bigfoot. We went out there to look at the town site of Portlock and figure out like how, you know, where they can build things and where they can settle. And is it a viable area to resettle? And so I hope, you know, our hope is that we're able to get back out there and we can reveal more of what we found. We can reveal more of what we saw, and some of the things that happened, but also start to try to put some more of the pieces of the puzzle together, because right now we have a couple pieces together, but interestingly enough, like every time we were kind of talking a little bit before we went live, right? Where every time we went out to answer a question, we came back with 5, 10, 20 more questions, right? So it's like, we always had more figure out. Like Jeff and Jeff starts peeling all these layers of the onion back, and we like the stuff he was coming up with and the research he was able to find. I mean, first of all, I find it absolutely fascinating and mind-blowing what he was able to uncover and figure out. And the information that he found out was just like unbelievable. And I think that information came back to us in Portlock, and we're all sitting there talking about it. It was like, I think it was a bit of a reality check to some degree. But yeah.
Now, I know a lot of histories. Oh, sorry, Carl, you hadn't finished. Sorry, you were saying.
Oh no, that's it. You know, it's just a lot of info, and I'm sure DJ and certainly Jeff can chime in on that. I'm sure too.
If I could say briefly, I want to point out that the native people have their own oral traditions, spoken and handed down for decades and centuries. Mostly what I was able to do is to go through historic records, in some cases anthropological ethnography reports, and as well as these written Western documents. But that is more to support the native traditions, which are more likely to be that much more personal to the site. So this was kind of an adjunct to the existing native traditions.
Do you know what? That's the question I was going to ask. You've answered it already. So yeah, that's the exact question I was going to ask, whether there was any sort of evidence with the native people that lived there, the indigenous people, their history being oral. Was there anything handed down sort of that predated the Spaniards and the British getting there and the Americans that appertained towards that area being supernaturally, if you like, infested or what have you?
That sounds like a DJ question to me.
Yeah.
Throw you under the bus.
Well, like you said, it's all like oral tradition type stuff. So there wasn't any like exact dates or anything. It was like your great grandfather seen this type of thing, and I grew up thinking it was like lore, and they're trying to just keep us from going in the woods when it was foggy or dark or whatever. And then when we got to Portlock, like Kyle was talking about, we started getting this information. They're showing us pictures of newspaper articles that Jeff was able to dig up, and they're from like San Francisco, all over the lower 48. And I was like, wow, okay, this is not just some stories to keep us out of the woods. Like, this is actually okay.
I got a question for DJ, actually.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to go back to the program. And I know that you're a cook and, you know, you're an outdoorsman and you know a lot of stuff. Did you do all the cooking on the show? I mean, the stuff that we didn't see. Who did the cooking for everyone in the camp?
I did about 99% of it.
I knew it. I knew it. Knew it.
So there was definitely a few scenes where I was not in, but I was stayed back and cooked and stuff, and there was like someone there with me. So that way always watching each other's back.
Do you not think that Nantinak or Bigfoot, whatever you want to call it, do you not think that by you cooking could also have drawn it in closer to your camp because of
not
what
just
he was doing?
Nantinak, there's also bears and other stuff that you got to watch out for. And
of course,
even just like catching a fish and pulling it out of the water, that scent of that fish will attract any kind of predator. And we're lucky to have Kyle out there because he definitely gave us a few pointers of how to watch our backs and watch each other's backs while we're out there. So that was really, really helpful also.
So talking of watching each other's backs, I want to quickly just talk about you and Noah and the dogs and that situation where Noah got terrified. He heard something that really upset him. At that moment when he was so scared, how did you stay so calm and cool? And, well, you seemed to on camera anyway, let's just put it that way. And even afterwards, when you were, it looked like you was being stalked, but you didn't realise at the time he was freaking out and you was fairly calm. How did you manage that?
I grew up in the woods around there, so I kind of have an idea of what to look for. But there's that night we put up the audio recorder, I didn't even hear anything. I was just listening to like the breeze, the wind, and the branches. And then when we played it back, I was like, I freaked out. I legitimately freaked out. I was like, it sounded like that was right by us whispering and trying to communicate. And I was like, okay, that is way too
but it sort of solidified what your ancestors and what your great grandfather and your tribe, other tribal members, what they were saying. It sort of solidified that for you in a way, didn't it? To say, well, hey, look, what they were saying and what they were telling me must be true because I've actually experienced it.
Yes, exactly. Like, and then just being out there in the first place, it's all definitely, you get an eerie feeling while you're out there. Like, you're not the only one there.
Yeah.
And we did go look for bears and stuff, and we really didn't find any out there. So it was really like strangely quiet. Like even
it's
the
quite
birds,
telling, isn't it?
Like there were, like usually there's like gulls and eagles everywhere. You can barely find any. Maybe a couple squirrels and rabbits, but that was about it.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. Very interesting.
Like before we go for any forward, right? I have to do a round of applause, and Dan, I want you to join in with me. And I'm
holding this, but I'll do this.
Right, a round of applause for Tiffany, and everyone clap for Tiffany. And the reason we're clapping for Tiffany,
don't you clap, DJ? You don't know why she's doing it yet.
I don't need
because Tiffany put all you guys to shame. She went out further up on the ridge where you stayed close. She went further and dared to go one step just further just to get some answers for everybody.
I had
Tiffany.
to feed everyone.
That is true. It's very important. Very important job feeding.
I think it's kind of a different situation. These guys are out there. They're trying to get pictures. They're trying to get video. They're trying to experience. I went out there to, for lack of a better term, hunt it down. And so in this case, they were the ones who were being hunted. And so that's the difference, I think. Because as soon as I pinpointed where I wanted to go and could follow this trail, I was on those tracks. I was going to find it. So that's where that difference comes in. These guys are amazing. It was not an easy place to be. I mean,
no,
I can't imagine being out there for as long as they were. So,
but with all due but with all due respect to the lady that was there, for the medium that was there initially, she seemed like she couldn't wait to get out of there quick enough.
It was
not that I blame her. Not that I blame her one bit.
It was completely overwhelming when you open yourself up to that energy. It was everywhere, and it was like a poison, like kind of just like a fog of this thick sludge-like ick, and it was everywhere, and it would gather in certain spots on certain trees, and that's when when I noticed the obelisk, how it was like it was flowing around the obelisk. It wasn't even touching it, and it was creating these little whirlpools kind of this energy flowing off the mountain. it was everywhere. It was unavoidable. And it was just, I was not ready when I got there. They said to me, Tiffany, there is a place, it's a village. They want to kind of go back and live there. But there's been some weird stuff happening. Do you want to go? It might be on film. And I go, oh, okay. Yeah, you know what? I think I want to help these people. So that's what I was out there to go help. And then the day before we left, they told people who I care about where I would be just in case something happened.
Yeah.
And we got there, and I was completely caught off guard because I usually do houses or, you know, land around a house. I don't do this massive area. And I will tell you that little houses, there's something there. I can go and I can pinpoint it and I can follow it. In this case, it was everywhere. Everywhere. Yeah. It was mind-boggling. I've never experienced anything like that in my life.
Tiffany, can you describe the smell that you smelled when you was there?
Oh.
And how does that compare to the guys that smelled something? Is it the same kind of description?
I mean, I assume so, because when I got to there, it happened twice. Once, I don't think they had it in the film, but once was up at the water tower. Kyle, DJ, was up at the water tower, and then as I was climbing up the hill to follow this stream of that energy, I got to the top and I could just smell it. It was foul. It was like sewage, rotten meat, compost times 1,000. Like it was just all, oh, it's horrible. And I turned to the mic or the camera guy and I said, "Do you smell that?" And he goes, "Yeah, I smell it." So I know it's not in my head.
Yeah.
But it was utterly horrible. Like it just.
But the guy, Kyle, did you smell that smell on DJ? Did you smell it while you was there? That smell?
I personally did not, but my grandmother would tell us if you smell something that probably about as terrible as Tiffany described it, look for a flower to put to your nose so you can smell it so you can get away from it. And something stalking you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that on the tree.
So that just gave me creeps hearing that description. I was like, that's what my grandma said.
Did you smell it, Kyle?
We for myself, there were definitely times where I would get scent of things and just, what I do with wildlife and the bear guarding and stuff like that. That's one of the senses that I like to be tuned into, because there's certain areas where bears are a little bit more smelly than other areas and stuff like that. And there's what would typically happen for me is, and this happened with sounds a lot too, but with the sense, I would smell something and it was like it would catch me and I'd be like, okay, like where's that coming from? And it's like as soon as I would start to investigate that, it would just disappear and it would dissipate. But it was a smell of something putrid, something that definitely didn't belong there. My first inclination a lot of the times when I would get these whiffs would it'd smell like something was dead. It wasn't even like the smell of like a bear. It was like, oh, there's a dead animal around here. And it's like, okay, well, where's this dead animal? Let's figure out what it is. And you kind of like sniff your way to it. Right. Yeah. But when I would try to sniff my way to it, it would be gone. But interestingly enough, that's what would happen with sounds too. So there would be sounds we would hear, and I could make a list a mile long of what these sounds were, but let's just leave it at sounds for now. And we'd go to investigate these sounds, and it was like, okay, it's literally going to be right around this corner. And we'd get there and there was nothing. The sounds would stop. And then we'd move into a different area and new sounds would start. So it's probably a good thing that Tiffany wasn't out there in the very beginning of this project and tell us all this stuff, because I don't know if we would have been walking around the way we were walking around out there after she was there, because she for sure was seeing a whole different level of stuff that we weren't seeing. or smelling.
You also had a situation there where you had sort of disembodied whispers, didn't you? That were sort of close, pretty close to you guys at one point, I think, or one of you it certainly happened to. And it kind of, because obviously, you know, with Bigfoot, we assume that it's flesh and blood because it interacts with the material world. But there was stuff going on there that kind of defied that, wasn't it? There was stuff going on that was almost, well, was spiritual in its essence. So how did you sort of equate that, you guys?
Well,
Are you talking about Ash when he had it in his ear at that?
Yes, it was Ash. Yeah, it was Ash. Yeah, he got it in his ear. I think he came down from the ladder, didn't he, at the time, the run or what have you, which was quite interesting. He's braver than me, because I wouldn't have come out. No way would I have left that tree, to be honest. I'd have stayed up there.
I think that, like, I mean, obviously, you know, that didn't happen to myself. But I think, like, that whole disembodied whisper thing was kind of like a crescendo of what was going on out there. You know, like, to give you an example, there was one day we were, well, it was a night. We were out by the spooky tree, that crazy, crazy tree. And the goal was to go stand by the tree with no lights on, right? So just middle of the night, pitch black, go to the tree, turn all our lights off. We had a camera going, like a night vision little handheld camera that we had. There was no camera crew with us. And we had our audio guy there, and we had I think we had a little voice recorder as well. And so the whole idea was, like, go there, be still, be quiet, sit by the tree, no lights, no nothing, and just see what happens, right? Like, let's just see what happens. And I think we were out there long enough where that just sounded like a good idea for some reason.
Well, that stuff sounded pretty good after a while.
Yeah, I was just, you know, looking back on some of the stuff we did, we were just like, wow, like, what frame of mind were we in, right? But, like, that one particular night, like, to me, so what I heard was, like, I swear to God, there was a bear walking around us about 15, 20 feet away, right? Like, it had that total sound of a bear I've heard thousands and thousands of times. And then I even heard, like, the huff of a bear. And I'm like, okay, now I have confirmation there is a effing bear 20 feet away. I'm like, screw this stuff. I'm turning my damn flashlight on because this is now a dangerous situation.
Yeah.
And it was one of my rifle mounted flashlights. And so I'm like, rifle up, flashlight on, and looking around. And I'm just 100% expecting to see a bear, you know, 15, 20 feet back in the brush. And there was nothing. And the sound stopped. It all stopped.
Wow.
And then we started hearing weird, like, metal to metal mechanical sounds. We literally heard what we equated the sound of a bolt action rifle being drawn back and a round being racked into the chamber, which is the exact type of rifle I had. And, like, we all heard it. We're like, holy crap, did you hear that? And then we heard a train whistle, like the sound of, like, a train whistle. Like, I don't know what else to say, but it was like
nowhere, though, isn't it? It's the middle of nowhere,
there's no train or anything that could make a train sound anywhere remotely close. And so after all this happened, we're kind of, you know, processing this information again. And somebody mentioned, you know, like, we were talking about the train whistle thing, and we're like, well, we wondered, like, you know, at the sawmill or the cannery, did they have one of those, like, whistles to announce, hey, it's end of shift or it's lunchtime or whatever? Was that some sort of, like, sound that was captured that was playing back? But to me, like, I mean, I have my own sort of, like, opinion or theory about kind of, like, what's going on out there just from my uneducated sort of own experiences. But, like, it seems like whatever's out there is just able to play these different sounds and make these different sounds. It's like, you know, it was making sounds of a bear, and then it made a sound of, like, a bolt action rifle being, you know, racked around in, and then it's making, like, a train whistle sound. And this is all happening, like, in a very short period of time. It has this effect on you where you're like, the first time something happens, you're like, holy crap. And then something else happens in a rapid sort of sequence, and then it happens again and it happens again, really sort of ramps up your awareness in this sort of crazy way to where you're just like, all right, like what is actually going on out here? And if I remember right, I think it's the same night that DJ and Noah were in a different location with their audio recorder when they captured that sound on their recorder. I could be wrong, but on that stint, but that's what would happen. There'd be all these different sounds going on, and you know, I mean, I think the list just kind of goes on what some of these different sounds were, but it's just absolutely bizarre.
So, if I could say something, if that's okay. When I first arrived there, we did the scene where they kind of introduced us around the bonfire, right? And at that point, Liam and Kat wanted to talk to the crew about some experiences that they had. And I don't want to be part of that. I want to experience it myself and go in unbiased. And so I stepped away for a while. And I was walking around with a cast member, just far enough away that I couldn't hear anything that was happening over there. But I was also experiencing things that were, in a way, like they were repeating themselves. And in my past experience, I've always thought, okay, well, I see something happening over and over again. This is like a repetitive memory of what's happened here. And in this case, just the first one that comes to mind was the kids. So I heard kids giggling and laughing and playing. I didn't see them, but I heard them. And shortly thereafter, I heard the same exact sound repeated. And so my initial thought was, maybe, just maybe, this is like a repetitive type entity.
Yeah.
But I think it's different. And if I can go into this a little bit, if you guys are okay with this, I would love to.
Yeah, please.
For sure.
So was walking around, picking up different things through this veil of this nasty, because I have to get through this to get to what's actually there. And that was the hardest part. That's why I focused on this river of energy. I was just like, okay, this is what I'm getting. Let's follow it. But underneath there was repetitive things happening all the time. People walking, like those kids playing, the feelings that people felt. And I think I'm going to share this because it wasn't caught on film, but it was after we climbed to the top, and Liam asked me to kind of shut it down. He said, "Okay, Tiff, we'll shut it down. We're going to do a few more, positions and video of me at different angles or him or whoever." And at that point in time, I got bombarded. I've never felt so violated in what I do. Like, this thing broke through my walls, came through, and played with me like cat and mouse. And Liam, he had said something. He said, well, these elementals they're ancient beings mentioned in the Bible. I believe that was on the show. I don't remember. These are ancient beings mentioned in the Bible. And at this point in time, I'm getting this massive headache. This migraine is coming on, and I have to get out of there. And so the new bear guard, I'm sorry I didn't meet you, Kyle. The new guy, he was escorting me down the hill, and I heard this thing in my head laugh. It just laughed at me. And it said to me, "Ancient is a number. I am beyond time." Now, I thought to myself, okay, that's just really weird. Right now, I'm trying to get out of this headache scenario. But thinking about it afterwards, all of these things that have been playing back while I was there, all of these experiences that I had, I don't necessarily know if this is a type of repetitive type situation. I think this thing is capable of manipulating this fourth dimension here that we've got, known as time. Like, I think that it's something, it flat out told me, ancient is a number. I am beyond time. So I honestly think that all of these sounds that you might hear, Kyle, DJ, all of these things, they were played at one point in time, and this thing holds on to them like a cassette player can put it in, you know, and store it and pull it back out, push play. I think that's what's happening out there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just, that's my theory. And it's taken a lot for me to kind of come up with this because at the time when I left, I was hurting. I had to get out of there.
I can imagine. Yeah. That was going to be my next question to you. I mean, with the use of the energy that you did at that moment, afterwards, how long did it take you to recover? I mean, did you have to get off Port Lock completely, or?
I had to be off Port Lock for about 3 days before that headache went away.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But it wasn't something that followed me back. And of course I always do. I always ground, and I always, you know, cleanse and pray and all of, you know, what I need to do to make sure that I'm safe. But I didn't feel any sort of attachment when I left. And that's why I'm absolutely, utterly convinced that it's not a person. It's not a thing. It's the land itself that it wants.
Yeah, do you know what I was going to say? Do you think it's the land?
Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind.
Because I was saying earlier, there was a lot of activity that went on there that sort of transcended one particular, if you like, spiritual school or spirit school. You know, it wasn't quite one thing. It wasn't quite the other. It was lots and lots of different things that went on that sort of you would only find if we went and did a haunting, for example. We may only find one or two things out of the catalogue, whereas that seems to be the whole catalogue on that island.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I think that this thing is able to play with time itself. You know, we can have a ghost in a house. We can have a D. We can cleanse it and we can clean them out. But in a case like this, I think this thing is so powerful, something I've never experienced before. I think that it's possible that it will manipulate that time. And you may have a day in your life where you go from A, B, C, D, but this thing can take you from B to F or F to G, or where it can play with that. And that's the part that just was, that was really hard for me to come to terms with. Because I didn't.
Outside of time.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Because when you were talking about sounds, DJ and Kyle, you had the pleasure, and we are so jealous that you met Alan Moorhead, that he came and played those sounds, and these sounds were fantastic. But I want to ask you both: at any point while he was playing them, did you think that this is going to, excuse the expression, but this is going to stir shit up, and it's going to put us in a position that we don't want to be in after he's left? You know, did you ever get worried that what you was doing was just going to make it worse?
You want to go first, Kyle?
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like I have to preface this again by saying, you know, I was not like the quote unquote Bigfoot person prior to going into this show, right? And they really played me off as this big skeptic to a certain extent. I understand that, but I've always had a very open mind where I'm more like, well, I don't know it's real, but I don't know it's not real, right? And so because of that thought, I don't automatically dismiss things, because I have seen other things that most people don't think are real, right? So I've always had more of an open mind to that, and I have seen some stuff. So so when Ron was going to play this, I'm just kind of like, all right, well, you know, let's see what happens. And when he first started playing the sounds of the Sasquatch, my first impression was like, wow, like, holy crap, like, this is unreal. This is unbelievable. I had no idea like what they would sound like or what their language would be. And then he went through this progression of playing these different communications between the Sasquatch. And before he played one, he actually said, okay, this one's a little bit crazy. He's like, the last time when somebody played this, they actually got charged by Bigfoots. So I'm like, okay, this ought to be interesting, right? And then he played that one, and then we started getting rocks thrown at us.
Yeah.
And then after he was done playing it, there were like an insane amount of sequences of all these different noises. Like, and we're all hearing it. Like, everybody's hearing it, and we're just like, what in the actual heck right now? Because it was like all these crazy sounds, and like based on what Tiffany just said,
yeah,
it's like I'm like, that resonates with me a lot. Like what she just said is like, yes, thank you, because it's a way deeper level than I was thinking, but I'm thinking kind of more what she's talking about, right? And then the fact of what happened after he played those sounds, and then everything that happened, and in the sounds we were hearing coming back to us was just unbelievable. And so at that point, it's like, okay, what did we just do? And I think on in the show, I was like, okay, like what in the F did we just do, right? Like,
yeah.
And my thought was going into it was like, okay, we're just going to play some Bigfoot sounds, and we're just going to kind of see what happens. And then after that was all done, it was like, okay, some stuff actually did happen. So what kind of can of worms did we just open, and what's going to happen now? And there was something that happened right after all that didn't get shown, and was pretty crazy for me. But it totally goes into what Ron was saying about everything. Ron Moorhead was saying about everything with these entities. And I'll just say it. As I was standing there being interviewed after this process happened, I got these guys, in front of me, and I'm just, my natural thing I do is I'm always looking around, I'm always looking, just, that's what I do as a bear guard. It's just what I do. And out of my peripheral vision, I kept seeing this light, and I'm like, okay, maybe it's just a weird reflection, or, some weird lighting or something like that. And I'm kind of like still trying to stay focused on the questions they're asking me, and try to at least articulate some answers back to them, even considering what just happened with this Ron Moorhead thing. And I'm looking, and this light basically comes out of the tree, and it's a ball of light about the size of a basketball. It's pure. It's the whitest white light I've ever seen. And it wasn't radiating any light out from it. It was really weird. Like, if it was like a ball of light, like a light bulb, right? Like it would shine light out from it. It wasn't doing that. It was just this ball of light. And just like in the middle of me doing a response to the producer, I'm like, there's an effing ball of light right there. And as I did that, they like all whip around, and like they're trying to whip around with the cameras to catch it. And as soon as they did that, poof, it was gone. Yeah. Just like that. But the dang thing floated out from the tree. Well, I told that to Ron Moorhead, and he's like, oh yeah. He's like, these are like other dimensional beings that can travel. And he goes, that was probably them leaving, right? It's just like, like what? Like it was just completely bizarre. That's one of those things that didn't get shown in the show. It didn't get talked about. It'd be hard to talk about it because it's just hearsay, right? It's just.
But that in itself confirms what Tiffany's just saying about the interdimensional beings being there and coming in and out and doing that sort of thing. So
right.
There's a big connection there.
Is a huge connection, and that's what's so interesting about sort of the way this conversation is going. And the other interesting part about it is Ron Moorhead's sort of theory on a lot of this is these beings, these interdimensional beings, are able to gather energy from the trees. Like the trees are an important source to them. Well, this thing just happened to float out of a tree. And then it was just poof, it was gone. And it was right in the area that like from like where we suspect the rocks got thrown, where we were hearing these sounds come from. And then, oh wow, here's a giant ball of light. Me personally, I haven't seen anything like that happen before. That was the first time I've ever seen a giant ball of light just float out from a tree and then just poof, disappear. And luckily I wasn't the only person that saw it. And I think like, not to keep going off on too much of a tangent on this, but like there's so many things that happened that we're so glad there were other people out there to witness it, or else we we wouldn't know if we were really crazy or not. I think like we had somebody else there to be like, oh my gosh, did you just hear that? Did you just hear that? And they're like, kind of like what Tiffany was saying about when she smelled that.
Yeah.
She asked the camera guy, do you smell that? And he's like, yeah. And a lot of times that was like our sounding board with these non-cast people, right? The guys that are there doing a job, walking around with their camera, walking around with their microphones and stuff.
Yeah.
And we're like out trying to find stuff and do stuff, and all this stuff's crazy stuff's happening. And they're like, yep. They're sometimes holding their cameras, nodding like, what the F, you know?
Yeah.
So anyways.
We got some questions in the chat. I better put them up, Dan. You want to do the first one?
Yeah, no problem. Right. Did you feel a change in the atmosphere, such as getting scared in some places and safe at others?
Yes, over by the spooky tree, you can definitely feel like there was some sort of presence or energy there. And it was always just a little bit more on edge there than when we were over by base camp. But there was definitely some places that were gave me different feelings. Back at that night, also when we played the last sound and the trees started shaking and everything started getting active, I literally looked at one of the producers and I was like, do you guys have one of your PAs in there? Because, you know, he might get hurt. I have to go in and check. And then I look over and he's walking over from base camp with a flashlight bringing fresh batteries. And I was like, oh, man, everyone's accountable for.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds like there's a lot of elementals on that island. Right. Question, please. Could you explain how you are going to protect these Bigfoot when they are identified? Because I feel very afraid for them from hunters and people to use them as a token.
I personally believe that Bigfoot's one of our protectors of our land. I believe that's why our native people have been able to stay there for so long.
Yeah.
Everyone else has been driven off. But that's my own personal theory.
I agree with that. I agree wholeheartedly with that. Got any others? Right. So Brian asks, so it was like everything was hunted out. Oh, I'm guessing that was appertaining to the question about there being no wildlife there or no bears and hardly any birdsong and what have you, the odd squirrel and
you
that.
go 10 miles east or west from that location and there's bears and everything else, and they can all there's stuff they can eat there naturally. So I mean, it was just a weird situation. Like there's no guards, and like anywhere along that whole coast, you can go through flocks of them for miles.
Yeah, it was the animal thing was bizarre. I mean, we all spend a lot of time out in the woods, you know, and most of us grew up in the woods in one form or fashion or another. And, you know, I do this stuff all the time in Alaska, and this place is just bizarre. Like we one day we got in the boat and me, Keith, and DJ said, okay, let's go find some bears. We know there's bears around here somewhere. And so we did. We went, I don't know, about 5, 8, 10 miles away or something like that. And we went hiking around, and sure enough, we found some bears. And we're like, okay, like there's bears over here.
Hike that far. It was close to
That's quite a distance, though, isn't it? That's quite.
We pretty much got off the boat. We got up in some grass. I started seeing some bear sign, and I started recognizing it was an active area for bears. And like, poof, 3 seconds later, here's a giant black bear. And we sat there and watched it. We're like, cool. We sat there and watched it for a little while.
And then we noticed it was walking towards the boat.
Yeah.
Like, all right, we gotta go.
Yeah. It's like, well, let's not let it cut us off, you know, from our main mode of transportation right here. But there were really like no birds. The only animal that I saw a fox by nearby the pit. I saw a fox there one day, and it was a weird sighting. The way it kind of walked in was like it to me, it felt like a person for some reason, but it just happened to look like a fox. I don't know if that makes any sense, but and we saw some some land otters, and that's it. That was it.
Wow.
That was really kind of it. I mean, there was like no real presence of birds. Oh, we saw a bald eagle, but it disappeared after a while. Never came back.
That habitat, should be teeming with life, shouldn't it? Really,
it is an amazing area. Like if you take that same habitat, right, and you just go anywhere else, and it would be teeming with wildlife. There would be birds of all kind and everything everywhere. So it was completely bizarre.
Yeah, I agree. Right, William asks, Tiffany, how much did you pick up that was from past humans and human activity? The location sounds very haunted.
Oh, there was quite a bit of activity there. But I have to say, and I have to just kind of reiterate, when I arrived there, my goal for myself and for my crew was to find out what was causing all of whatever might have been happening in the past. Because keep in mind, I had no idea. I had no idea. But the second you land, you know that there's something different about this place than there's been. Because I live in Alaska, born and raised, all over the state. And I have never been in a place that has had this energy all over the land. And by the way, DJ, the spooky tree is one of those places where that energy comes up, and it flows off the mountain, and you can just kind of see it bubbling at the bottom. But and there's actually a couple other ones. And if you guys go back out, maybe I can find them for you, and you can like keep an eye on them.
Absolutely.
But as far as like human activity, there was quite a bit, but there was other stuff too. Like the guys were saying, you know, sounds like there were animals there. And I think what happens is whatever this creature is, and I don't think that its base is negative. I don't honestly think that it's a dark, evil, out for malicious intent type being.
No,
I don't think that at all.
No,
I just think we happen to be in the way.
You know, I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make with elementals. They assume that they're negative and demonic when in reality they're just ancient energies, ancient spirits. So actually, Terry asks, are they linked to elementals?
You know, that's a Liam question. He had said it was an elemental. I don't honestly. After we left that area and we went back to town, I looked up and I did a search engine search of elementals, and I found a bunch of like D&D gaming stuff. But
Yeah.
at that point, I was like, okay, whatever I'm gonna get, I'm not gonna probably get a lot of accurate information this way. So I haven't found a source yet to tell me exactly what was going on there.
Yeah, I mean, my idea of elementals is they're just ancient earth energies or earth spirits, nature spirits that obviously manifest, and they're there to protect the land. Like DJ was saying, protecting the land for the ancestors and for future generations and what have you.
It has any connection, but there is a ley line that crosses right above it. You can see it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I don't know if that has any connection to it, if it's just coincidence, but there is.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jeff, you were so sorry.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me kind of butt my way in. When talking about using the phrase elementals or these personifications of nature, this is not just Native American folks as part of their belief system. My apologies as somebody with degrees in anthropology and archaeology. I'm going to start using too many 4-syllable words. But animism, that is a belief that every object on Earth, whether it be living like animals or insects or trees, but also the stones themselves in the water, have their own life energy, life force, and spirit. And so many cultures across the world have this animism as part of their belief system. But if you look even at European, what we call mythology, ancient Greek mythology and Roman, they had a series of supernatural beings they called dryads. And dryads were the spirit, was made manifest from an animate object, that is a tree. A tree could have its own spirit, a dryad, and so there would be these groves of trees with their own personifications and their guardian spirits, springs were thought to be supernatural, and they would oftentimes have a guardian spirit too. And there were some mythological instances where somebody cut down a tree in winter and they used it as a mast for a ship, and come spring the dryad wakes up and its tree is now part of the ship, and so they themselves move with the wood. I just wanted to kind of add that, to think about elementals can be animate, they can have some physical form, or they can be inanimate, they can be unseen energy.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm a big I subscribe to the Fae and animism, and also subscribe to elementals as well as part of my religion. The same as paganism. Well, yeah, I mean, paganism's many different. It doesn't mean one thing or the other, really. It just means anybody that's not mainstream sort of Judeo-Christian, really. Everything else falls under the umbrella of paganism.
I want to say something before we close. So when the next season is aired, and I'm keeping everything crossed for you guys, Kyle, I want you to update your gun and get a bazooka, because if you do come across this Bigfoot, I don't think your gun's going to be enough. So either borrow, oh God, what's that guy's name? The demonologist.
He needs to borrow that. The demonologist guy's thing.
Bazooka blaster, or get a proper bazooka, because I don't know how you're going to take this thing out. This is just way beyond us. But I want to wish you guys well, especially Kyle, because I've seen you going out on your own, patrolling, making sure everything's okay. And I just think, and I don't care what I'm going to say it, all of you guys, I think you've all got balls of steel. I know that I couldn't do it. And I just want to thank you for what you've done and bringing this to us, because we've learned so much from the show as well. And I hope these guys from Nanwellick get back to Port Lock at some point. I really do hope that, you know, you can find a happy medium and both live together in harmony. But I just hope and pray for them, basically, all of them.
Thank you so much, guys. Tiffany, Kyle, Jeff, DJ, wherever he's gone, I'm not sure. He's back in the ether somewhere, but thanks everybody. Thank you so much.
I think he was on a boat fishing.
Oh, was it?
His beard was glistening, so it looked like it had reflection of the water on there.
But yeah, guys, you've got to go and watch this program. It's absolutely fantastic. I don't watch a lot of TV because it numbs the mind, but this is fantastic. You've got to go and watch it. If you watch one
Discovery
Plus,
if you've got Discovery Plus, it is on there. If you have Amazon Prime, I think it's on there as well. It is a binge. You will start binge watching it, I promise you, because once you start watching it, you get hooked.
And once is not enough, is it, Viv? You'll keep going back to it because it's that good.
Yeah, there's also a Facebook fan page, over 10,000 members, and Kyle and Ash and the rest are all admins for that. So you might be able to ask them some questions.
There you go, guys. Get on that fan page on Facebook.
We've put it in the chat. There we go. It's here.
Yeah, it's in there. Yeah, it seems to be it seems to be a pretty good conduit for people to sort of talk about a lot of what's going on, and you know, we chime in when we can. I mean, the summertime in Alaska is a very busy time for us. I mean, most people are involved in some sort of seasonal type occupation, and it's extremely busy, but we try to get in there when we can. But I think when things slow down, you'll see us probably all be a little bit more active in there. But it's really cool hearing from everybody and interacting with folks, and you know, we appreciate all the love and support we're getting from everybody, and everybody who's been involved in the project and wants to be involved in it. And we're hoping we can get back out there. You know, at the end of the day, we're doing this for the people of Nanwalek.
Yeah.
And we really want to keep pursuing that vision and goal for them. And if we can learn some things about our world we live in and these different realms and energies and things like that at the same time, I mean, that would be super cool. I think we're in a very collective audience here, but we all know there's a lot more going on out there than what they sort of portray in the mainstream media, right?
So much more going on.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, thanks for having us on. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Please get that second series out soon.
Yes, we're gonna
do it. Hey, you know, like
do it. You got to do it. You got to do it.
Let me just add, you know, so the networks want to hear from people, right? They want to hear that they want this to be another season. And I think the more people that kind of keep kicking on the door and knocking on the door saying, hey, give us a season 2, give us a season 2. And this is going to be, you know, the Travel Channel primarily, but I mean, just kind of blast it out in the stratosphere out there, you know, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, you know, let them know. We want to see this. Send them emails, like do whatever you can do. And
I'll definitely send an email. Definitely.
Yeah. And tell them you want Jeff and Tiffany both back on the show.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yes.
Without a shadow of a doubt. We want Jeff to stay in the woods on his own for a couple of nights.
I'll have to borrow one of Kyle's shotguns.
Give him the small one. Give him the small one.
Yeah,
right. Guys, thank you so much. And one more thing. I've obviously seen photos of Alaska and that, but never been there. But with that footage, that place is like heaven on earth. It's just stunning.
Yeah.
Terribly fearsome place to live, I would imagine, but it's just God's own country. It's gorgeous.
It's an amazingly gorgeous place. Like
it is.
I've been all over Alaska, and there's something very, very special about that location. Not only from, you know, the beautiful scenery and everything, but it's definitely got an energy out there that's different than anywhere else in a positive way as well. But yeah, it's a really, really cool place. Yeah, cool. I agree with Dan right there. We need more Jeff Davis on he'll be our resident historian, archaeologist.
Oh, there you go.
We're gonna put him to work, and you know, I think that's a whole other aspect of the show that hasn't really been kind of tapped into yet, is the archaeological aspect to it. Because I think there's some more stuff going on out there, right, Jeff?
That would be cool if Jeff went out there as an archaeologist. That would be fantastic.
I think so too. I mean, there's literary evidence in the coin, which will have to be a whole nother podcast.
Blew me away, that did.
Perhaps European contact in the 1500s. Mm-hmm. Captain Drake, maybe.
You know what, Jeff? You're leaving yourself wide open here. You know what they're going to do? They're going to find a big hole and just throw you in it.
I'll have to dig my way out with the trowel.
Throw them in the hole so you can't come out. So you come out with a treasure chest full of gold.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much. And
stay where you are for now, guys. Just quickly, on Friday, we got the Frighteners coming back. Lois and the team will be back at 8 o'clock on Friday. And I believe that William Becker is also has a guest on Saturday at 10 o'clock. So be sure to tune in. We will be back next week at 8 o'clock. I don't think we're going to top these guys that we've had on tonight.
No, not at all.
You know, this has been the highlight of the year for me, I must admit. And I love all the guests that come on.
Yeah, it's been fantastic.
I've been really thoroughly enjoyed it tonight. So hope you can tune in on Friday at 8 o'clock with the lovely Lois and the gang. And we'll speak to you soon. Take care, everyone.
And I'm off to rewatch Alaskan Bigfoot Killer. So there you go. I'm watching it.
Take care, everyone.
Bye, guys. Take it easy.